Well, we just had UFC 316, and we have got what Josh and I call our matchmaking do-overs for what's going to happen now. Believe.
What just happened right there?
What the hell? It's a do-over.
The worst intro I've ever heard you come up with.
Is it really bad?
No, it's what's next. What is next? Who's next?
The do-over for some of these guys because they didn't have the nights that they thought they were going to have. Jeez. And for some of them, it is what's next from them. You're right. It's kind of like a do-over. Okay, hold on. I'm going to do a do-over. All right.
No.
Hey, welcome, man. We just had UFC 316, and we've got the what's next coming up here where we're going to do our matchmaking. Josh has got his picks. I've got my picks. We do not know what each other's picks are, but we're probably going to match up on a couple of them because we always do. But there were some really good fights, I thought, at 316. I thought the championship fights really were impressive. Merab was fucking phenomenal. Kayla was phenomenal. So lot going on there. I hear that Joe Pyfer is not happy with the commentating of his fight with our man Kelvin Gastelum. I'm like, why are you worried about what they're commentating? You just go out and do your job and win like you did.
Yeah, you will find yourself in a really bad position if you continue to argue with the commentary team, especially if it's Joe Rogan. Like, you have to know your place.
There you go. Know your level.
Yeah. That's kind of where you're at right there, right? Like, it just comes down to like, Joe's been around the game for a long time. DC's been around the game for a long time. You know, Joe, I think, is a fantastic fighter. I just hate to see young fighters come in. I was one of them for a bit there. With my first stint in the UFC, I was telling Dana, I'll be retired when I'm 30 years old. I'm going to go ahead and live my life, this and that. Look, I fought till I was 39. Yeah. What the fuck?
You were cocky as hell, too.
Yeah, exactly. And it didn't benefit me at all. No, I mean, if I would have stayed more focused, more driven, my career would have been way better than it was. And I have no one else to blame but myself. I would have been a lot more active as well. I think with Joe Pyfer, he just needs to stay focused and see what's ahead of him. Just focus on the goal. And what's the goal? The goal was to win the title. The goal was to be the best. And he's got skill, man. He's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. He's got big power. We saw that on display. Whether you're an Olympic athlete, professional hockey player, MMA world champion, or just an active kid, LMNT helps anyone stay hydrated. Each stick pack delivers a meaningful dose of electrolytes free of sugar, artificial colors, or other dodgy ingredients. Get your free sample pack with any LMNT drink mix purchase through link in bio. Also try the new LMNT Sparkling, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. Roll, train, ride, or play, but stay hydrated and stay salty. But before we get started this is John McCarthy. I'm Josh Thomson. I just want to say who's next, what's next for all these fighters. Let's jump right into Merab.
What do-overs are we going to have?
I don't think we're going to have any do-overs. I don't think any do-overs.
No do-overs.
We're not giving you the do-over on the intro. That's
for
sure.
I tried.
Okay, look, we already pretty much know what's going on with Merab.
Yeah.
That's a done deal.
But you got to go with it. You know, it's Corey Sandhagen, and it should be.
Well, Corey, Merab's made it very clear. He's like, no, I think the most deserving person is Corey Sandhagen. The UFC, I think, is 100% on board with this. It's pretty much already been announced that fight is going to happen, and I like that matchup.
Absolutely.
The good thing for Merab is he doesn't have to change much.
No, you're taking a look at the people he has fought recently. Mm-hmm. Even Umar is someone, look, Umar's good with his stand-up. Very slick. He's got good wrestling. You know what? That wasn't a bad lead-up, you know, towards a showdown with Corey Sandhagen, and definitely Sean O'Malley was not a bad lead up with the stand up that he possesses in the movement. Mm-hmm. So both of them, they're good for him.
No, I agree. I think this is what makes it easy is you're training for a very similar fighter. You don't have to change much. And it's not as if fighters change a whole lot. There's times where you're fighting someone who's really good in one area, so you make a lot of adjustments in that area. If you're fighting like a Khabib Nurmagomedov, okay, you're going to be like, okay, a lot of my takedown defense and a lot of myself getting away from the fence, circling the lateral movement. Yeah, getting up. Yeah, a lot of takedown defense and a lot of getting up. And with guys like when you're fighting someone like a Sean O'Malley, it's literally like cutting the cage off and trying to put pressure, but not over extending yourself on striking or overcommitting and shooting from too far away. Merab fought a fantastic fight. He did everything right. I'm glad that he verified what I said, that Sean O'Malley was a better fighter this time than the first time, because he said that. And I'm glad, because everyone's like, oh, what are you talking about? Sean O'Malley looked like shit. He did this. He was worse than last time. No, he just got, honestly, it's just difficult to thwart off somebody who wrestles and has that kind of pressure. He didn't look worse. I thought he looked better. The wrestling takedown defense was better. The grappling was a little bit better. His striking, I thought he could have done a little bit more on the striking.
It was the power bar, the whole power bar thing.
Yeah.
Slowly and systematically, you watched his power bar going down.
Yeah.
Just from the pressure and what Merab was doing, and you look and you go, I can't tell you that it wouldn't have gone down on anybody.
No,
it was tough.
What makes the Merab fight and Corey Sandhagen fight interesting to me is that Corey Sandhagen adjusted his last fight because of what happened with him and Umar.
That's true.
Man, the movement. I did what Sean O'Malley did. I circled too much. I ran too much. I've got to learn to just small little steps, give little feints, make them react, and then go ahead and make another move or throw my combination. So I think that obviously Corey's going to be a very difficult fight for him, but I think Merab is someone who he does what he does at another level, and the confidence in him is an all-time high. You see all the things he's doing, whether it's social media, whether it's inside the cage, everything.
Did you see his social media with the robe and the girl?
Nuh-uh.
Oh my God, it was fantastic. He comes, he's got this purple robe on, and he's got this good-looking lady in front of him, and you kind of see his back, and he opens up the robe, and she goes, "Oh my God, it's so big." And he's like, "Yeah." And she goes, oh, can I touch it? Oh, it's so hard too, right? And the camera comes in front, he's wearing the belt.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
All right, but we know who's next from Merab, and that's going to be Corey Sandhagen. Where does Sean O'Malley go from here?
Well, I've got, you can go a couple of ways with O'Malley. You can put him in a rematch with Peter Yan, because Peter Yan's up there. It'll either move Yan up ahead of O'Malley, or it'll keep O'Malley kind of where he is, a little bit up above where Peter Yan is. But that's a good rematch in the fact that a lot of people would like to see it again. It was a very close fight the first time. I'd like to see it in a 5-round, so I'd want to see it in a main event. But if you're not going to put O'Malley with Peter Yan, I would say put O'Malley with Song Yadong. I think him against Song, it's tough. Mm-hmm. But what you're doing is you're doing two things. First off, Song Yadong likes to stand up. But it wouldn't be the smartest thing for him to do against O'Malley. He should utilize the wrestling that he has. He's fast. He's got good wrestling. O'Malley's got to learn, and I'm not saying learn. He's got to get a confidence back in that he can stop people from taking him down. Well, this is a perfect person to try to do it against. He does have good wrestling, but he likes to stand. He's fast. You got to sink or swim when you're up in those upper numbers. When you're in the top 5, there's no easy fights.
I'm going to go with the Peter Yan fight. Yeah. I think there was just too much history there. It just makes sense. Peter wants to get to that title shot, and no other way to get through it than someone who just fought for it 2 times in a row. Came up short, or lost his title, I should say, and then came up short on the second one. And I think there are a lot of controversy surrounding that first fight. And I agree with you 100%. Make it a 5-round fight. Yeah. Can Sean O'Malley do it for 5 rounds? Can he stay away from Peter Yan enough where Peter obviously is someone he just wears on you and just keeps putting the pace, keeps putting the pressure, and tries to reach and hit that shot. He's got big power in his hands. He's got good takedown defense. He will wrestle when he wants to. He just chooses not to. Yeah. He's a very well-rounded fighter.
Yeah.
One of the best foot sweeps I've seen in the game. when I look at him, I think to myself, that's a fight that the story writes itself for the UFC. There's not a whole lot of marketing that goes into it. I've got old footage of this fight. I've got all the tweets probably still saved of people saying that O'Malley lost that fight, but then he got the win and the hand being raised. The piece that they're going to put out for promotion is going to write itself.
Oh yeah.
They don't have to. That is half the battle. What people don't realize. That's half the battle. They have to come up with these are not arguments, but the storyline. The storyline is some of the most difficult things to do, and then run with it and create a press for the press to attach themselves to that. They don't need to for this fight. So I think that's the hardest part. Sometimes it's to write the storyline. This storyline writes itself. Peter, plus the other thing, you don't want Sean to drop too far out if he does lose. So Sean is now Sean's number 1. You know, Umar, I think, is number 2 now, and Peter dropped to number 3, whereas Peter was ahead of Umar before. But now they've kind of switched places. But if Sean was to fight Peter, he doesn't drop too far out of it, and I think that there's something there. So I'd say the storyline writes itself. I would go with that fight, to be honest. It would be the Peter Yan rematch. Then you got Kayla Harrison. Obviously, we all know who she's fighting next is Amanda Nunes.
Yep.
Which is, look, I just saw a clip. I think it was BC and Luke Thomas. Do you get that big fight feel when you saw them square off inside the cage?
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah, for the way, anytime there's two people that you could look at, in my opinion, right now and go, that's a big fight for Kayla. And it's also a legacy fight. It's a building of her legacy. And those two people are Amanda Nunes, which is under contract with the UFC, even though she's retired, or it would be Chris Cyborg. Mm-hmm. That's your two. And so, you know, it's one of the two. And so it's a as big as a woman's fight, especially, you know, in the bantamweight, which I honestly think the bantamweight has gone down. They could do it at featherweight. I don't think they will, because she's not the champion of the featherweight division, so you can't really do that fight. So it's going to be at 135. You know, Kayla's come out talking about how bad this weight cut has been for her, though. Mm-hmm. You know, and even you know, just that 1 pound from 135 to 136. There's a big difference between being 136 and 135. It sucks. Yeah. And she went through a lot to get there. I don't know how long she's going to be there. So the legacy fights have to happen. And so I think this one with Amanda, yeah, it's one of the two that I think is a legacy fight for her.
Yeah, there's no one else for her to be.
That's the whole point.
That's it. Like after this fight, she should just ride off into the sunset, just become an ambassador for the UFC. That's really what it comes down to. Like Chris Cyborg's not coming down to 135. You know, the UFC, if they wanted to entertain that, they would say, okay, because Kayla said, hey, I'll fight at 45. And they could just bring the title back for the one fight that everyone wants to see, which would be, if she does beat Amanda Nunes, you could see Chris Cyborg versus, you know, Kayla Harrison. But I doubt that will happen. I think it'll be, it'll be Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. Yep. That's the only fight really to make. I didn't get the big fight jitters or the big fight feel, though, when I saw them face off inside the cage. I'm excited for Kayla Harrison.
It was a little friendly, and that's why. Yeah. You know, and that's okay. It's understandable. They used to, you know, used to be teammates that kind of trained around each other a little bit. They didn't really train a whole bunch together. But, you know, you could take a look, and this is no disrespect in any fashion. I love Raquel Pennington, but she would be the next one in line if you were going to look and say who should Kayla fight. Well, it would probably be Raquel. And that's, you know, when you take a look at the two and you're going to say which one inspires you more, which one gets you more fired up, it's got to be the Amanda Nunes fight.
Absolutely. And then you've also got Juliana Peña. Where does she go from here?
I'm being honest. I don't know who you picked for it, but I picked someone, but it's not in the 135-pound class.
I picked the same exact thing.
Okay.
I did the same. I kept her. I've taken her out of the 135-pound division, and I'm taking her to 125. But who do you have her matched up at 125?
I have her matched up with Erin Blanchfield.
So do I.
So do I. Funny, dude. That's pretty good. Yeah.
I just give her a fight to see how she does in making the weight.
Well, and it's a quality fight as far as they're both very good on the ground. They will stand and throw. And a lot of people, you know, talk about Erin that, you know, oh, she's got no stand-up. She doesn't have the greatest stand-up, but she's tough. She'll take shots and keep coming. So She's very similar to Juliana. They do, their ground game is a little different the way they work it, but I think it would be a great matchup.
Yeah, and that puts her right in title contention. That's one.
Yeah.
Two is she can go ahead and have that first soft run trying to make the weight, and against not against the champion. Plus, you don't want to give her a title shot coming off of a loss for a title or losing her title. But that makes sense. It makes it like she's just not a big 35 pounder against females like Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like if you match her up against other females in the 135,
even when you can look at something like Caitlin Vieira, she doesn't match up well size wise. Norma Dumont doesn't match up well, size wise. So she's undersized in that division. I'm not saying she hasn't done very well there, but she's undersized there, and I think she would do very well at 125.
Yeah, it just depends on her commitment to want to make that weight.
Yeah,
it makes it very difficult. Very difficult. You got Joe Pyfer versus Kelvin Gastelum. How do you see for Joe Pyfer? How do you see?
Again, Pyfer is the guy. He's got all the tools. It's a matter of he needs to stop saying he's going to knock people out. Because when you say it and it doesn't happen, it not only the fans start to go, he just talks, and it's not like he's trying to knock out a really good fighter, but he likes to stand up. He's got good power. And so I go and I say, well, if I'm going to I need to start moving Joe Pyfer up into that top 15. Mm-hmm. Let me pull somebody out of that. And I go with Roman Kopylov. I think him against Roman Kopylov would be a hell of a fight. Pyfer doesn't go to the ground a whole lot. He doesn't want to. He likes being in the stand-up. Same with Kopylov. That's where he's strong. I think it'd be a really good matchup.
Yeah, I actually went a little bit higher, and I decided I wanted to go with Paulo Costa.
Wow,
you have two guys that have big power.
Yeah.
Paulo Costa is not a very active fighter these days, so he's not getting better. He's just kind of just sitting where he's at, probably living off the Izzy fight still.
Doing whatever to live off of.
You know what I mean? So I look at that fight and I think to myself, if I'm going to put Joe Pyfer in a really good fight, I'm going to put Paulo Costa in a good fight. They're both going to stand and trade. There might be a little bit of wrestling here and there, but I get flashbacks of a possible Yoel Romero Paulo Costa fight. Possible. Now, my question is, do you make that a main event?
Yes. Have to.
5 rounds.
Have to.
I mean,
okay, what's been one of the things about Paulo Costa?
Yeah, not a lot of cardio.
Not a lot of cardio. What's one of the things that people have said about Joe Pyfer? There you go. So yeah, I want to see. Have you learned? And Pyfer talked about it. He says, look, I was in good shape. And he was in good shape for the fight. There's no doubt, he had a gas tank, but 5 rounds is different than 3 rounds.
Yeah, so we could end up with rounds 4 and 5 being snooze fest, though, if they both get tired, John. As a promoter, you're like,
big power gone all out the window.
What do you do with Kelvin Gastelum?
I look at, you got to do one of two things. You got to look and say, hey, I'm in a position now with a guy that he's been a tweener forever and everything. I'm going to just use his name, put him against people that I think are the future, and let them, get, a win against Kelvin and use his name. Mm-hmm. Or I can sit there and say, all right, I'm going to take and put him against someone to see, is he still there? And that's what I would do. I'm not going to give it up, right now. He lost, but he came back in that 3rd round and he took some big shots and he showed a lot of heart. So that tells me, dude, he's still a dog. He still has that in him. I would look towards, 1 or 2 people. I would say Eric Anders would be a good matchup. It would be solid. They're both, good on the feet. Both of them can wrestle some. I think Kelvin's actually a better wrestler than Eric. Either that or Andre Muniz. Andre Muniz being a guy, came in real hot, winning all of his fights. He's had some problems lately. Well, Kelvin's had some problems lately. Let's put those two together. Let's get a win.
Yeah, I was going to go with Mikhail Oleszczyk or whatever his name is. I think the two of them would make Poland. Make for a fun fight.
That would be a good fight.
I think we're just in a position where, Mikhail Oleszczyk or whatever. Yeah, he's good. He's fun to watch fight. And we saw that Gastelum still has something left in the tank. And at 85, he's a better fighter than he is at 70 because he doesn't make the weight, and then it just kills him. Yeah. And so I want to keep him where he's at 85, but I want to give him guys that I know, look, I want fights for the fans to soak that last little bit of entertainment out of them. And this is one of those fighters that I think will help bring it. Yeah. So I think that for the fans, for the sake of the promotion, for the sake of like where the sport of MMA is right now, let's go ahead and start making fights that are just fun. You know, not everything needs to be that step towards the title. I know the fighters are always like, that's what they want. That's what they want. But man, like I said, I look back on my career, and I know a lot of other fighters do too. Like Dustin Poirier right now is like, no, legends only. He wants to go out fighting somebody that he respects, somebody that they respect each other, somebody that he's shared blood with and just had fun with. And those fights are some of the best. Yeah. So I take, if you take Mikhailovich or whatever versus Kelvin Gastelum, I think it makes for a very fun fight for the fans.
I like that one.
Mario Bautista versus Patchy Mix.
Well, Mario Bautista, his next fight, in my opinion, should be Marlon Vera. Chito Vera is a good pick for him. It's a step up. It's a guy that has fought for the title. It's a guy who's been there. And so, look, you looked really good against Patchy. You fought a smart fight. You followed the game plan. You did everything right. Let's see you do it again. This is one where if you take him down, he is a little dangerous on the ground at times, and he doesn't like to stay on the ground. He works his way back to his feet. And one thing we know about Chito is, look, he can pop when he lands. He's got that pop in his hands and his kicks. So you've got to keep yourself safe on the feet. I think it's just an evolutionary step up for Mario Bautista.
Yeah, look, the reason why I said Chito was the same thing was, but I also said they were matched up to fight, and that's how Patchy Mix got this fight. That was the matchup, and then Chito got hurt and was taken out of the fight, and then Patchy stepped in on 3 weeks' notice. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it just makes sense to go ahead and just say, hey, he's also ranked above Bautista, so let's go ahead and just make that matchup again. Yep. Still is. Yeah. So let's just make that matchup again. Obviously a lot to be said about Patchy Mix. Didn't fight the way that we've seen him fight. Just made it a stand-up fight. I saw Kamaru Usman come out and say today that he struggled to make the weight. That was one thing, like the weight class, the weight cut in the 3-week period. He looked sucked at the weigh-ins. I didn't see the weigh-ins. I just saw Kayla Harrison's weigh-in because everyone was posting that around. But I didn't take a look at the weigh-ins outside of that. I'm just glad there's a bunch, like from Henry Cejudo to Kamaru Usman to other fighters that were all saying that Patchy Mix was the real deal. Merab came out and was like, hey, I train with him all the time. He's one of the best fighters or one of the best people I've ever trained with, this and that. Just knowing that, like I said, you and I talk. Everyone thinks that we're Bellator bias or PFL bias. We like those fighters, but if we don't promote those fighters, no one else will, because the fucking PFL don't fucking promote them. That's for sure. So I gotta be on their bandwagon. Like I'm the biggest fan of fighters that I see have success outside of the UFC, because I was one of those fighters for a long time. Yeah. And not just me, but other fighters that came into the UFC and then had a lot of success. There was fighters that were written off by the UFC that left the UFC and then came back to be world champions. From Robbie Lawler, to other guys. But I mean, just simply put, I'm a fan of fighters that are courageous enough to, hey, I don't need to go just straight to the UFC, that I want to try and be successful outside, which is what I've always said. Be successful outside, because the UFC will always want you. And that's how Patchy got into the UFC, is that, he's done everything he could possibly do in his promotion. And I'm glad to see him come over. Wasn't the performance we wanted. It was good to see all the other fighters talk about how great it was to have him over, how good he is, and back up what we've been saying. So it wasn't just us two shills, right? For a promotion we don't even work for anymore. We're still talking about how great a lot of these fighters are. I think he'll take the same avenue. Obviously now he has to. Is that he needs to prove to everyone that he can do it. Yeah. And I think for him, I have one of two people. I've got Zahabi or I've got Rob Font. You had Zahabi.
I did.
Yeah.
I got always Zahabi.
Yeah.
It's a good fight.
Sense. It's a good fight.
Because Zahabi always fights smart. He's always got a great game plan. He tries to follow that game plan to the letter. You can just watch him as he's fighting and his corner's calling out stuff and he's doing it, which is just telling you he's just in rhythm with that. Mm-hmm. He's got a good ground game. He's got a very good and solid stand-up where he's technically good. So if Patchy comes out and has the same, same fight that he does against Merab and Patchy, he's going to lose. Mm-hmm. He'll lose to him. But if he comes out and performs and fights the way that he can and uses the skill sets that he's so good at, he can get the win against Zahabi. And Zahabi's ranked somewhere in 8-9, somewhere like that. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great second fight for him. The
reason why I threw in maybe a Rob Font, which would be a dangerous fight for him, given what we just saw with Bautista, who is not the striker that Rob Font is.
Yep.
But that being said, it really comes down to how much money he negotiated for his contract, his entrance contract. If you're making a lot of money, then we want you to fight these top guys. And it's a sink or swim.
Yeah.
Because if you don't make it, then okay, then we're fine with re-signing you, but maybe at a lower purse. So then you can work your way back up later on, and then we can re-sign you after that as well. If you find your way to the winning path. I think, it really depends on what they signed him to, on who he potentially matches up against. Yeah. There's marketability there. There's his Las Vegas ties also. The UFC has seen him, Sean Shelby and Hunter Campbell and all that. They know exactly what they're getting when they'd seen him inside the gyms. These guys frequent gyms, man. They see, they know, they hear, they buzz. Vegas is just an echo chamber of fighters just talking about how good someone is, and all fighters talk. All managers are all hanging out there because that's where their fighters are. And they're all buzzing about, who they saw and what they like. And then it gets pushed around. So Patchy will be back. Wish him nothing but the best. We'll see what happens from there. All right. So the last one is Kevin Holland and Vicente Luque. Who did you have for Kevin Holland?
Kevin Holland made the call out, and I liked the call out. So I went straight with what he said, Colby Covington. I thought it was a good call out. I think it actually is a fight that would be interesting. And, Colby's held on to a position there in the welterweights, but it has slipped consistently, and it should, because of, his performances have not been enough for the win and stuff. But I look at it right now and I go, I think that, Kevin Holland staying at 170 and going after someone like Colby, that's a perfect matchup.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I like the Colby Covington and Kevin Holland call out. But, I want to throw somebody else in there only based on the fact that I think this would be a good fight. Would be Randy Brown. I know that's
both tall.
Yeah.
Both, yeah.
But Randy Brown's not in the rankings. I think I looked him up, and he's somewhere in
Isn't
that.
He? I thought he was now.
No, he's not. He's somewhere in like the 12, 13 on Tapology, but he's not in the UFC rankings. But I look at him because he had that loss to Brian Battle, and then he had the win over Nicholas Dalby.
Yeah.
And then, but I look at that fight and I'm thinking to myself, that might be a good matchup. They're both tall, long, both will stand.
That would be a good matchup.
Kevin's fast, it'd just be a fun fight. Yeah. It'd be a fun fight. I like to see guys fight, you fight someone your own damn size, Kevin Holland, fight someone your own size, buddy. And then where do you go with Vicente Luque after this loss?
Look, with Vicente Luque, I'm putting him in with somebody that I think has shown, he's shown a lot of promise as a fighter in the beginning. He had a little difficulty. He's come back and shown how tough he can be. And Vicente Luque, we know is just, he's a gamer. He's tough. So could he get the win? He could get the win against this person, or I can help with, using his name. So I took Mike Malott from Canada.
Son of a gun.
Did you take that?
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Mike Malott. Malott. Yeah. And look, and I wouldn't actually be opposed to Randy Brown fighting.
No, that was another one I looked at.
So, yeah,
the only reason I didn't pick Randy Brown is because Kevin Holland being the same size and everything. I thought, I wouldn't do that to Vicente again with that length.
Yeah, but Randy Brown doesn't have the submission game that Kevin does.
No, he doesn't.
But you'd end up having a good fight. So for the fans, you'd have a good stand-up fight. Yep. And Vicente looked good in the stand-up in that fight. He was throwing, he was trading. He just ended up getting caught in the choke. Yep. But I took Mike Malott as well, because you can build off of the older guy's name for Mike Malott.
That's it.
And Mike's got a bright future as long as he keeps winning. So those were my matchups. Those are your matchups. And hey, to be honest, that's another episode of Who's Next, What's Next for these top fighters that were on the pay-per-view, UFC 316 pay-per-view. What do you think?
I think let's do a redo.
No, thanks. I'm good. We will.
We'll see you guys later.